And that option is actually to use a GPU. And this is going to be giving us absolutely big advantages when it comes for upscaling and overall emulation performance. But in this video we are going to be implementing the GPU. However, we're not going to be focusing mainly on this because it can be different when you're going to be having different models. Because this is the 1030 and this is not the best choice when it comes to having a GPU. However, that was the only one I could find in the collection for now, but we can switch it out with different models. So this thing is quite clunky compared with the other version. However, let's open it up and let's see what we can do with the GPU, because I did notice a problem. So what you can do actually is just open this up and we can just slide it off. Or at least I'm going to be needing two hands. There we go. But what is different? To begin with, this thing does come with a built-in power supply. So it is not like the most epic power supply ever, because this is just a PC that is actually made for just basic office work. It also utilizes over here when it comes to a CD drive, so if you want to use that, that is possible, but we're not going to be using it of course today. So it has such a basic active cooling fan, and performance I think it's going to be quite nice. But there was one problem. If you want to implement the graphics card, it's going to be a big issue. Don't mind like the bracket, we're going to be changing it out later on for a low bracket. But if you're going to be slapping it in, it has a limited space. And the problem is with this, with the limited space, there is only a handful of GPUs that we can actually use. So what we're going to be doing is like removing this piece of metal for a low bracket, and then we're going to be putting it in later on in the video. But first, let's boot it up and let's do a quick overview and see what we can actually do out of the box. At the front we're finding the reset to USBs, and that's very convenient for plugging in a controller, and then of course the headphone jack out. And at the top we're finding the disk drive. But this massive bad boy comes with a lot of connections. A European connection or the Euro connector for plugging it in and powering it on. Having the option for all kinds of USB connections. RJ45 is great if you're going to be using Battlezilla or another program, even a fastport if you want to use an external drive, and a DisplayPort, two of them. So, however, there are a lot of different options when it comes to connecting your device. But how are we going to be connecting it and how are we going to be using Battlezilla? So first of all, we do have different options when it comes to emulation. We can use the Windows part and just slap ourselves a Lunchbox, let's say, drive in it, and we can just play through there. However, what we're going to be doing is using the Battlezilla, because I'm just going to be honest, I'm a huge fan of it. The Linux is very stable and very nice way to play. We can put a built-in drive, for example, going to be flashing it into NVMe, depending on the size of course, or we can just plug it in externally. That's one of those many ways that we can play. So let's plug it in and let's go and see what we can do out of the box and what kind of i5 8th generation we're having over here. So we're having a 2 terabyte image, so we have enough space to store all of our games. So the temperature 39 Celsius idle, and this has to do because of the ventilation and a massive cooling fan. This is one of the things I love about the HP PCs. So having the i5 8th generation or the 8600 running on 3.10 gigahertz, and actually CPU number is 6, what it says over here, and max frequency to 4300 megahertz. So when it comes to the GPU, we're having over here the Ultra HD Graphics 630, but we're going to be switching between the 1030 later on and trying to see what's the difference between, let's say, having an extra GPU, will this benefit, and is it going to be a great upgrade. But let's get into some emulators and have some fun. So the next thing we're going to be doing is choosing the certain game to be testing, and Die Hard is one of those games I always love to check out. However, next thing we're going to be doing is holding the A button, then we're going to be advanced game options, choosing the different emulator, in this case the Yaban Shinshiro, and next up we're going to be doing a little bit of a rendering resolution. So it has been set to 4K, but we're going to be messing with it to see how far we can actually push it with the GPU, and if it has horrible performance we can also implement the extra GPU like the Nvidia to see if you're having any improvement. But Sega Saturn on 4K rendering resolution doesn't really need an extra powerful GPU. We can just run this on this, I think it's called the 630 onboard Intel GPU. That's kind of nuts if you think about it. So only downside I think of the Yaban Zero emulator, that the overall audio quality is good, but it is quite low. So we need to tweak with that. However, if you're getting into this Die Hard and many Saturn games, 4K rendering resolution without any problem. So let's try this on some really high resolution, 3840, just to see how far we can push it. It dips down to 49. I'm quite surprised at the overall performance. Dipping to 45. But it would be a fun thing. 43 frames per second. But what you can actually do is just do the same game and implement the GPU of Nvidia to see if this is going to be an upgrade, or at least a minor upgrade, with the 1030 GT. Oh, this is such a fun little game. So let's see how it performs now with a different GPU implemented. So I know for sure if you're having a different, let's say, CPU, GPU combination, so having a more powerful GPU can even do some more wicked stuff. But the overall performance is so much significant better now, where it struggles big time without the other GPU, or the onboard GPU actually. Now we can just have a lot of fun on full 60 FPS. And of course you can also do a little bit of tweaking with two-dimensional games to see if you can have higher resolution going on with, for example, two-dimensional games. Moving on to the Dreamcast with Sonic Adventure 2 with the same resolution actually. So this is going to be the resolution that we're going to be using with the same like the Atomic Wave. So let's get into the game, resulting in the same kind of overall frames per second. Where I think it's still playable. If you don't see the frames per second, I think it's going to be a still overall fun experience. I love it how the vibration also works on the controller, where you can just see it dipping. You do see the stuttering visuals even not looking at the frames per second. This game is even running more horrible than the Atomic Wave version, with dipping to 41 frames per second. But how much fun would it actually be to add the GPU now and to see what happens? And take note, depends what kind of GPU you're going to be using, where the 1030 GT is not a great card in my opinion about it. There are way better options out there, but yeah, again, we are a limitation of the space inside of the case itself. That the performance boost is not that great. We do have like 50 frames per second now. Okay, so certain parts we do see an upgrade when it comes to that, but the overall performance is still okay when it comes to that. I was expecting way better performance now. So this part, previously we had like 40 frames per second. Yeah, you can see that we have indeed an increase of 10 frames here. Okay. Then I think I spoke too early when it comes to that. And again, I think if you're going to be using a GPU that is more powerful, we can just hit the 60 frames per second without any problems. Or of course getting a way newer generation Intel CPU or having an AMD Ryzen, because those APUs or GPUs on board are so great. So with PlayStation 1 we can do already some crazy upscaling with 4K rendering resolution. We had a minor dip to 41 frames per second, but that was only a minor dip in the beginning, but having a very stable overall frame rate on the onboard GPU. So where we have a great overall performance here, what we can actually try is to get ourselves a higher resolution and implement the GPU. But it's quite amazing to see that we can do so many cool overall rendering on just an onboard 630 GPU. There we have in the 43 dip. But let's see if it still dips if you're going to be implementing another GPU. I think it's going to be even more fun to check out. But let's move on to the Crash Bandicoot game with PlayStation 1. And the simple reason is that with the 4K we had overall great performance. And I can tell you, not want to push it further with the onboard chip. But now we have 11 times the resolution with the built-in GPU, and I got a TNT stuck on my head. Doesn't matter. So far no dips in having the stable 60 frames per second. And that is a very cool thing to see. So this is an example that with even a very cheap extra GPU implemented in, you can just have even higher resolutions in some of the games. And that was actually the clue of the experiment too, just see how far we can push it. And again, if you're having a way more powerful or better than a 1030 GT, we can even have the option maybe to put it on 12 times rendering resolution. And if you're fine with 4K, you can just use the onboard GPU. Just I wanted to check out if we can actually play some Tekken with rendering resolution on the onboard chip first. You can see that it struggles. It's running on 1080p rendering resolution. Ooh, it really has a little bit of struggle here and there, but I think this is going to be a great sweet spot to check out if we can also implement an extra GPU and see how far we can go then. So with PlayStation 2, I still want to put it on 1080p, just to see if we can even have now a better overall performance. I did notice a very minor hiccup, but you can just see that the performance is so much better now. So let's go with the flow and let's see if we can manage to clear this freaking stage without any dips whatsoever. You can just see on 1080p it really benefits, and if you're going to be implementing a more powerful GPU again, maybe you can even do a little bit of 4040p or 4K if you want to go fully, let's say, wild with this. But I'm quite satisfied with the 1030 GT with 1080p rendering resolution. So next up I wanted to check out when it comes to 10 times resolution. And with PlayStation Portable it looks so great, however it's running absolutely choppy, and that is a little bit of a downside. So the next thing I just wanted to see is like how far we can push it and what will this GPU extra going to be giving us. So you can see it runs like 27 frames per second. Frame skip can be set to off. Of course we can do a little bit of a 4K rendering resolution, but what's the fun about that? So let's see what happens if you're going to be implementing a GPU and do we having a big boost that we can actually play 10 times resolution. PlayStation Portable 10 times resolution, where it was completely unplayable on the onboard GPU. Let's see what happens now. So far so good, even with the intro we had like an overall better performance, but it seems to be that the GPU with this tiny upgrade is more than enough to play this on 10 times resolution. Let's go a little bit further. Yeah, there we go, that's what I wanted to see. It still freaking struggles. So where we do have like an overall better performance, we still do a little bit of tweaking, or just leave it as this and live with the fact that we're having sometimes minor dips. But while I'm playing PlayStation Portable games on such a high resolution on a beautiful 1080p display, it's absolutely nuts. Oh, when there is an explosion you can see massive dips. And you can also put in the frame skip if you want to. We just wanted to see what happens as it is. Ooh, particularly the same spot again. So with the onboard chip you do have some okay performance. I just wanted to see what happens if we're going to be putting it on 920 by 4040. See the frames per second already dipped to 21. So yeah, that is not the way that we actually want to play. I don't really notice it visualize at this point. Maybe it's going to be stuttering later on in the game. But you can see it goes back to the 30 frames per second. So this is just great, and we can check out some other games, but I just want to focus what happens. So we do have a dip. Well, what we can try actually is do a little bit of a higher resolution and implement the GPU at this point to see what are the difference. And also I want to be pointing out, maybe I said it throughout the video a couple of times, depending what kind of GPU. I have the 1030 GT is not a great card at all, but will give us maybe a little bit of a boost that we can actually play everything. Because that was the clue of this PC, that we can add a GPU to it to increase performance of the rendering resolution. Okay, so I just wanted to see what happens if we're going to be putting it on the highest resolution. On the onboard GPU I know that is not going to be having any positive effect and having a lot of problems. But with the N64, man, we have been so many, let's say, problems with cheap game boxes, but even on the highest setting of the resolution, that is just insane. We have great performance to that. So 5760 by 4320 or some kind. This is absolutely nuts. Of course we're going doing the crazy test with F-Zero GX. I love this game, by the way. It's the only game I play on my GameCube at this moment. But you can see it struggles. You know, it's hitting the 60 FPS. But sometimes it does struggle, and I just wanted to see what happens if we're going to be implementing a GPU. I think it will have a big, massive impact on this particular resolution now, but maybe we can also do a little bit of an upscaling to see if you're having 1080p with the GPU, and maybe if you're having more powerful GPU that it has way better performance. You even can put it on 4K resolution. But you can see it does like a lot of dips, even 720p. Oh. So we need to lower it to 480p to get like a stable overall performance. And this time with the Dolphin, where we did have an overall, oh crap, forgot to use, I was trying to use the D-pad, but with the implemented of the GPU on 1080p, so we're even having higher resolutions, it runs absolutely smooth. I've been messing with it. We can try a little bit of a higher resolution, but then we're going to be having the same result with minor hiccups. If you don't mind it, you can do it. And of course, the F-Zero GX isn't a very difficult game to emulate compared with other ones. So we're having like a basic game, two-dimensional stuff, you have even better result with this particular GPU. And again, GPU upgrading, a faster GPU will also means having overall better upscaling. So I just wanted to see, and I can say that it's a very overall positive thing going on when implementing an extra GPU to this old school mini PC.